Sometimes the most profound moments in our lives arrive disguised as ordinary Tuesday mornings. And sometimes the greatest acts of love happen not in grand gestures, but in the quiet decision to stay when everyone else walks away. Today I want to share with you a story that will touch your heart in ways you might not expect. A story about family, sacrifice, and what it truly means to love unconditionally. It's a story that began with abandonment, but found its way to something beautiful, something that reminds us that family isn't always about blood, but about the people who choose to stay when staying becomes difficult. My name is Sarah, and at 50 years old, I never imagined I would be sitting here sharing the most challenging and rewarding chapter of my life with you. But this story isn't really about me. It's about three beautiful children who deserved better than they got, and how sometimes life has a way of putting the right person in the right place at exactly the right moment, even when that person doesn't feel ready for what's coming. I need to take you back to the beginning to help you understand how we got here. My younger sister Rebecca and I never had what you'd call a close relationship, even as children growing up in a small suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, where I was the responsible older sister who helped with dishes and homework. Rebecca was the one who pushed boundaries, who always seemed to be testing just how far she could go before consequences caught up with her. Our parents, God bless them, tried their best to guide us both. But Rebecca had this way of making it clear that she didn't need anyone's guidance, that she knew better than all of us what was right for her life. When we graduated from high school, the divide between us became even more apparent. I chose to continue my education, working part-time jobs to pay for community college, and then transferring to Arizona State University to finish my degree in education. Rebecca, on the other hand, moved in with her boyfriend Marcus, a man in his 30s who had money and charm but whose stability always seemed questionable to those of us who knew him well. Our parents worried, of course, but Rebecca made it abundantly clear that their concerns weren't welcome, that she was an adult capable of making her own decisions, and that their old-fashioned values simply didn't apply to her modern life. Looking back now, I can see the signs that should have warned us all about what was coming. Marcus showered Rebecca with expensive gifts and took her on lavish vacations, but there was something about the way he kept her separated from our family. Something about how she gradually stopped calling home or visiting for holidays. When Rebecca became pregnant at 22, our parents tried to be supportive, tried to bridge the gap that had grown between us all. But Rebecca seemed to interpret their concern as judgment, their offers of help as intrusion. The twin girls, Emma and Olivia, arrived on a cold February morning, and I remember holding them for the first time and feeling this overwhelming sense of protectiveness wash over me. They were so tiny, so perfect, and they had this way of looking at you with those big, trusting eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul. A year later, when little Michael was born, that feeling only intensified. These weren't just Rebecca's children, they were part of our family, part of our legacy, and I found myself wondering how three such innocent beings had ended up in such a complicated situation. The trouble started when Emma and Olivia were 3 years old, and Michael had just turned 2. Rebecca discovered that Marcus had been having an affair. Multiple affairs, actually, and the confrontation that followed shattered whatever stability their little family had managed to build. Marcus moved out, and while he agreed to pay child support, he made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with the actual responsibility of fatherhood. He signed away his parental rights as easily as he might sign a credit card receipt, leaving Rebecca to face the reality of raising 3 small children completely on her own. Our parents and I tried to step in, tried to offer the support that Rebecca and the children so desperately needed. I was teaching 3rd grade at a local elementary school by then, making enough to support myself, but certainly not enough to financially support 4 additional people. Still, I found ways to help, bringing groceries when I could, babysitting on weekends so Rebecca could look for work, sending small amounts of money whenever possible. Our parents did the same, stretching their fixed retirement income to help their daughter and grandchildren make ends meet. But what none of us realized at the time was how much Rebecca was beginning to resent the children, how she was starting to see them not as blessings to be cherished, but as obstacles standing between her and the life she felt she deserved. Without a college degree or significant work experience, Rebecca was forced to take entry-level jobs that required long hours but paid very little. She started working at a retail store in the mall, then moved to a restaurant where the tips were better but the schedule was unpredictable and the work was exhausting. The real challenge came with childcare. Rebecca couldn't afford to put all 3 children in daycare, and even if she could have afforded it, the cost would have eaten up almost everything she earned. She found herself in this impossible situation where she needed to work to support her family. But working meant leaving her children with babysitters she could barely afford. Or worse, with friends and relatives who were already doing her favours she wasn't sure she could ever repay. Started noticing changes in the children during this time. Subtle at first, but growing more apparent with each visit. Emma, who had always been the more outgoing of the twins, became quiet and withdrawn. Olivia started having nightmares and would cry for what seemed like hours without any apparent reason. Till Michael, who should have been chattering constantly and getting into everything the way 2-year-olds do, seemed almost afraid to make noise, as if he had learned that being heard was not always welcome. During my visits to Rebecca's small apartment, I began to see glimpses of what life was really like for these children. Rebecca would snap at them for normal childhood behaviour, for spilling juice, or asking for attention when she was tired from work. She would tell them they were the reason she couldn't have nice things, the reason she couldn't go out with friends, the reason her life had become so complicated. These weren't occasional moments of frustration that any parent might experience. These were patterns of behaviour that seemed to be becoming more frequent and more harsh. The children started to seek me out during family gatherings, gravitating toward me in ways that both warmed my heart and broke it at the same time. They would climb into my lap to hear stories, ask me to help them with simple puzzles or colouring books, and beg me to stay longer whenever I had to leave. I could see in their eyes this hunger for positive attention, for someone to listen to them and validate their feelings and treat them like the precious beings they were. Rebecca began dating again when the children were still very young, and this created a whole new set of challenges for everyone involved. She would meet men online or through work, and she developed this pattern of not mentioning the children until she had been seeing someone for several weeks. When she finally did introduce the subject of her 3 young children, most of these relationships would end abruptly, leaving Rebecca feeling rejected and bitter. And unfortunately, she began to blame the children for these romantic failures. I tried to talk to her about this pattern, tried to suggest that being upfront about her situation from the beginning might actually lead to more meaningful relationships with men who were genuinely interested in becoming part of a ready-made family. But Rebecca saw this advice as criticism, as another example of people trying to control her life and tell her how to handle her own affairs. She became defensive and angry, insisting that she deserved to have a romantic life separate from her responsibilities as a mother, and that the children would just have to understand that they couldn't be the centre of her universe forever. What hurt the most was watching how this affected the children's sense of security and self-worth. They began to internalise their mother's frustration, began to believe that they were somehow responsible for the problems in her life, that if they could just be better behaved or less needy, maybe their mother would be happier and love them more. Emma started trying to take care of her younger siblings, attempting to quiet Michael when he cried and cleaning up messes before Rebecca could see them and become upset. The situation continued to deteriorate over the next several years. Rebecca moved from job to job, always blaming her employers or co-workers for the problems that led to her leaving, never acknowledging her own role in these workplace conflicts. She moved apartments frequently as well, sometimes because she couldn't afford the rent, sometimes because she had conflicts with neighbours or landlords, always disrupting the children's sense of stability and making it harder for them to form friendships or feel settled in school. Our parents tried to maintain a relationship with their grandchildren, but Rebecca made this increasingly difficult, using access to the children as a way to control and punish family members who she felt had criticised her or interfered with her choices. If our mother suggested that the children might benefit from more routine or structure, Rebecca would suddenly become too busy to bring them for their usual weekend visits. If our father offered to help with expenses, but suggested that the money should go directly toward the children's needs, Rebecca would accuse him of not trusting her and would refuse his help altogether. I found myself walking on eggshells, trying to maintain a relationship with both Rebecca and the children, trying to be supportive without appearing judgmental, trying to be helpful without seeming like I was trying to take over. It was an exhausting balancing act, and I wasn't always successful. There were times when I saw Rebecca being particularly harsh with the children and spoke up, which would lead to arguments and periods where I wasn't welcome in their home. There were times when I bit my tongue and said nothing, and then went home feeling like I had failed those beautiful children who needed someone to advocate for them. The children were remarkably resilient, but they were also obviously struggling. Emma developed anxiety that manifested in perfectionist tendencies, constantly worrying about whether she was doing things correctly, whether she was pleasing the adults in her life. Olivia became the family mediator, always trying to smooth over conflicts and make everyone happy, taking on emotional responsibilities that no child should have to carry. Michael, sweet little Michael, seemed to retreat into himself, becoming watchful and careful, learning early that the safest strategy was often to stay quiet and try not to be noticed. When the children reached school age, I hoped that having teachers and other adults in their lives might provide some additional stability and support. Unfortunately, Rebecca's chaotic lifestyle made even this challenging. Children frequently missed school because Rebecca overslept, or forgot about early dismissal days, or simply decided at the last minute that she needed them to stay home to help with something. They often arrived at school without lunch money or proper supplies, and I began quietly providing money to the school to ensure they could eat and participate in activities. As a teacher myself, I knew the signs of children under stress, and I recognized them clearly in Emma, Olivia, and Michael. They were bright children, capable children, but they struggled with concentration and confidence. They were often tired, sometimes hungry, and always seemed to be worried about something. When other children talked about family vacations or weekend activities, they would listen quietly, rarely contributing stories of their own, because their home life was so unpredictable and often unhappy. The turning point came when Emma and Olivia were 15 and Michael was 14. They had grown into remarkable teenagers despite everything they had endured, but they were also clearly ready to take control of their own futures. Emma had thrown herself into academics, earning straight A's and involving herself in every extracurricular activity that might help her earn scholarships for college. Olivia had discovered a talent for writing and art, finding healthy ways to express the complicated emotions she had been carrying for years. Michael had one evening. They sat on my couch, these beautiful young people who had grown up too fast and learned too early that they couldn't depend on their mother for the emotional support they needed, and they told me that they had made a decision. When they turned 18, they wanted to come live with me. They wanted to finish high school in a stable environment. They wanted to apply to colleges without having to worry about whether Rebecca would cooperate with financial aid forms or transcripts. They wanted to begin building the futures they had dreamed about for so long. I was honored by their trust, moved by their maturity, and terrified by the responsibility they were asking me to take on. These weren't small children anymore. They were young adults with opinions and goals and complicated emotional needs that had been shaped by years of instability. I was a single woman in my 40s, settled in my career and my quiet life, and they were asking me to turn that life upside down, to give them the foundation they needed to launch their own lives successfully. But looking at their faces that evening, seeing the hope mixed with fear in their eyes, seeing how hard they were trying to appear confident about this decision while still being vulnerable enough to ask for my help, I knew there was only one answer I could give. These children had been part of my heart since the day they were born, and if they needed me, if they trusted me enough to ask for this enormous favor, then I would find a way to make it work. The conversation with Rebecca was every bit as difficult as I had expected it to be. She was furious, accusing me of manipulating her children against her, of undermining her authority as their mother, of trying to steal the only good things in her life. She said I had no idea how hard it was to raise 3 children alone, that I had no right to judge her parenting when I had never had children of my own, that I was only interested in being the fun aunt who got to swoop in and be the hero, without having done any of the hard work of day-to-day parenting. Some of what she said hurt because there were grains of truth mixed in with the anger. I hadn't raised children from birth. I hadn't experienced the exhaustion and frustration and financial stress of being a single parent. I had been able to be the supportive aunt who showed up for the good moments and went home when things got difficult. But I also knew that Rebecca had made choices throughout their childhood that had prioritized her own wants and needs over the well-being of her children, and that those choices had consequences that were affecting all four of them. The most heartbreaking part was watching how Rebecca's reaction affected the children. They had hoped, I think, that their mother might see their decision as an opportunity for a fresh start, a chance for her to focus on building a stable life for herself while they finished growing up in an environment that felt safe and supportive. Instead, Rebecca saw it as abandonment, as rejection, as proof that everyone in her life eventually turned against her. The children moved in with me right after Emma and Olivia's 18th birthday, just before their senior year of high school. Michael still had another year to go before he was legally an adult, but Rebecca was so angry about the twins leaving that she essentially gave up her fight to keep him. It was as if she decided that if she couldn't have all three of them under her control, she didn't want any of them. And she signed the paperwork that allowed Michael to live with me as well. Those first few months were an adjustment for all of us. My quiet two-bedroom apartment suddenly felt very small with 4 people in it, and we had to learn how to navigate each other's routines and habits and need for space. But there was something beautiful about those early days too, something healing about watching these young people relax into an environment where they didn't have to walk on eggshells or worry about dramatic mood swings or wonder whether their basic needs would be met. Emma threw herself into her final year of high school with an intensity that was sometimes worrying, applying for every scholarship available, and researching colleges with the determination of someone who understood that education was her ticket to the life she wanted to build. Olivia spent hours writing in journals and creating art that reflected her journey from childhood trauma to emerging adulthood, processing her experiences in ways that seemed healthy and promising. Michael focused on his grades and his volunteer work, already thinking about the pre-med track he wanted to pursue in college. We established routines that the children had never experienced before. Family dinners where everyone talked about their day, homework time when the house was quiet and focused, weekend activities that were planned in advance and actually happened as scheduled. We talked about their goals and dreams, about the challenges they were facing, about the healing they were doing as they prepared to move forward into their adult lives. Rebecca cut off contact with all of us during this time, refusing to take phone calls or respond to text messages, even from the children. She blocked us on social media and told other family members that we had betrayed her and stolen her children. Our parents tried to maintain relationships with everyone, but Rebecca made this increasingly difficult, accusing them of taking my side and threatening to cut them off as well if they continued to support what she saw as my interference in her family. The children grieved the loss of their mother's presence in their lives, even though that presence had often been painful and unpredictable. They had hoped that some distance might actually improve their relationship with Rebecca, that maybe she would use this time to work on herself and eventually be ready to have healthier relationships with all of them. Instead, her complete withdrawal felt like another abandonment, another confirmation that her love had always been conditional on their compliance with her needs and wants. Watching them graduate from high school was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. Emma earned valedictorian honors and a full scholarship to study engineering at the University of Arizona. Olivia received a partial scholarship to study creative writing at Northern Arizona University, with the remaining costs covered by grants and a work-study program. Michael finished his junior year with a 4.0 GPA and early acceptance to several universities for when he was ready to begin his college career. They had accomplished all of this while dealing with complex family dynamics and emotional trauma, while supporting each other through difficult times, while learning to trust adults and build healthy relationships and envision futures that looked different from their complicated past. I was so proud of them, so amazed by their strength and resilience and determination, and so grateful that I had been able to play a small part in helping them reach this point. College brought new challenges as each of them learned to navigate independence in healthy ways. Emma excelled academically, but struggled initially with perfectionist tendencies that made it hard for her to enjoy her successes or form close friendships. Olivia used her creative talents to process her experiences through writing and art, eventually becoming a mentor for other students who had experienced family trauma. Michael continued his volunteer work while maintaining excellent grades, already thinking about the medical schools he wanted to apply to and the communities he hoped to serve as a physician. They stayed in touch with me throughout their college years, calling regularly to share their successes and challenges, coming home for holidays and breaks, treating my apartment as the stable home base they had never had during their childhood. I attended their graduations, celebrated their academic achievements, offered guidance and support as they navigated internships and job searches and graduate school applications. Emma earned her engineering degree in 4 years and was immediately offered a position with a renewable energy company in Phoenix. Work that aligned with her passion for environmental sustainability and her desire to make a positive impact on the world. Olivia completed her writing degree and went on to earn a master's in education, eventually becoming a high school English teacher who specialized in working with at-risk students who reminded her of her younger self. Michael excelled in his pre-med studies and was accepted to medical school, where he focused on pediatrics because of his desire to help children who were dealing with difficult family situations. 7 years passed without any contact from Rebecca. The children, now successful adults in their 20s, had built lives they were proud of, careers that fulfilled them, relationships that were healthy and supportive. They had done the hard work of healing from their childhood experiences, of learning to trust and love and believe in their own worth, despite the messages they had received from their mother during their formative years. Then came my 50th birthday, a milestone I wanted to celebrate quietly, with close friends and family. Michael, who was finishing his residency at Phoenix Children's Hospital, insisted on organizing a small party. Emma took time off from her demanding job to fly home from the renewable energy project she was managing in California. Olivia drove down from Flagstaff, where she was teaching and working on her first novel in the evenings and weekends. It was a beautiful evening filled with laughter and stories and the kind of deep connection that comes from shared history and genuine affection. As the party wound down and we were cleaning up, the three of them asked to speak with me privately. They sat me down in my living room. These remarkable adults who had grown from traumatized children into confident, caring, successful human beings. And they told me they had something they wanted to give me. Emma pulled out an envelope and explained that they had been talking for months about how to properly thank me for everything I had done for them. They knew, they said, that no amount of money could repay me for the years of stability and support and unconditional love I had provided during their most vulnerable time. But they wanted to show their gratitude in a concrete way, wanted to help ensure that I could retire comfortably when I was ready, wanted to give me the kind of financial security I had helped provide for them. Inside the envelope was a check for an amount that took my breath away. They had pooled their resources, each contributing what they could afford from their successful careers, to create what they called their Aunt Sarah Appreciation Fund. Emma explained that her engineering salary had allowed her to save aggressively. Olivia had received a bonus for her first published short story collection, and Michael had been working extra shifts at the hospital specifically to contribute to this gift. I tried to refuse, tried to explain that I had never done what I did with any expectation of payment, that seeing them thrive was reward enough for any sacrifices I had made. But they insisted, telling me that this wasn't about repaying a debt, but about expressing gratitude, about showing love, about ensuring that the person who had taken care of them when they needed it most was taken care of in return. Through my tears, I accepted their gift and took a photo with them to mark the moment. Without thinking much about it, I posted the photo on my social media with a caption expressing how proud I was of the people they had become and how grateful I was for their thoughtfulness. It was a private moment between family members that I wanted to share with friends who had supported us all through the years. 3 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, but somehow knew I should answer. Rebecca's voice on the other end was cheerful and familiar, as if no time had passed, as if the 7 years of silence and absence had never happened. She said she had seen my post about her children's success that she was so proud of how well they were doing that she had been thinking about them constantly and missing them terribly. She said she understood that she had made mistakes during their childhood, that being a single mother had been harder than she had expected, that she hadn't always handled the stress well. But now that they were adults and clearly doing well, she felt ready to rebuild their relationship. She asked if I would help her reconnect with them, if I would serve as an intermediary while they worked through the complicated feelings that had built up during their years apart. The timing of her call, coming just days after my social media post about their financial success, was impossible to ignore. For 7 years, she had shown no interest in their academic achievements, their graduations, their career milestones, their personal growth. She had known how to find us if she had wanted to reconnect, had known that our parents would have been happy to provide updates about the children's well-being. But she had chosen silence until she learned that they were financially successful and had money to share, when I didn't immediately agree to help her re-establish contact with them. Rebecca's tone began to change. She became more insistent, reminding me that she was their mother, that she had rights, that I had no legal authority over them as adults. She accused me of continuing to manipulate them against her, of poisoning them against their own mother, of trying to keep them from healing the family relationships that really mattered. I told her that if she genuinely wanted to rebuild relationships with her children, she should reach out to them directly, should take responsibility for the years of absence, should approach them with humility and genuine interest in their lives rather than expecting me to smooth the way for her. I suggested that any reunion should be about what they needed and wanted, not about what she felt entitled to as their biological mother. This conversation went downhill quickly. Rebecca became angry and accusatory, insisting that I was being vindictive and controlling, that I was keeping her children from her out of jealousy or possessiveness. She demanded that I arrange a meeting, that I convince them to give her another chance, that I help her become part of their lives again, now that they were successful and established. When I continued to refuse to act as her intermediary, Rebecca's mask finally slipped completely. She accused me of stealing her children for my own selfish purposes, of using them to fill some void in my own childless life, of taking credit for their success when she was the one who had given birth to them and raised them through their early years. Most hurtfully, she claimed that I was now stealing their money as well, taking advantage of their gratitude to enrich myself at her expense. I told her that her children were adults capable of making their own decisions, that their success was the result of their own hard work and determination, that any gratitude they felt toward me was earned through years of consistent support and love. I told her that if she wanted a relationship with them, she would need to approach them with honesty about her past behavior and genuine interest in their current lives, not with expectations about what they owed her or what she deserved from them. Rebecca's response was to threaten legal action, to claim that I had somehow alienated her children from her, and that she would make sure everyone knew what kind of person I really was. She said I would regret interfering in her family, that she would make sure the children understood how I had manipulated them and stolen what rightfully belonged to her. After I hung up from that call, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about everything that had brought us to this point. I thought about 3 scared children who had needed stability and love, about a sister whose own pain and trauma had prevented her from being the mother her children deserved, about the choices we all make when life becomes complicated and difficult. I thought about the family we had built together, the healing that had happened, the futures that were now possible because someone had been willing to step in when stepping in was needed. Decided to tell Emma, Olivia, and Michael about their mother's call, not because I wanted to influence their response, but because they deserved to know that she had reached out and to make their own informed decisions about how to handle her reappearance in their lives. When I called them and explained what had happened, their responses were both heartbreaking and inspiring. Emma told me that she had always held on to some hope that their mother would eventually deal with her own issues and be ready for a healthy relationship with them. But the timing of Rebecca's call, coming immediately after learning about their financial success, made it clear that her motivations were not about rebuilding genuine relationships, but about accessing the benefits of their success. Olivia said that she had been in therapy throughout college to work through her childhood experiences and had reached a place of peace about their mother's limitations and choices. She felt sad that Rebecca was apparently still struggling with the same patterns that had made their childhood so difficult. But she wasn't willing to sacrifice her own emotional well-being for the sake of a relationship that had always been conditional and hurtful. Michael, perhaps because he had been the youngest and most vulnerable during their difficult years, was the most direct in his response. He said that their mother had never shown interest in being a true parent when they needed parenting, and he saw no reason to believe that would change now. He was grateful for the life he had been able to build, with support from people who genuinely cared about his well-being. And he wasn't interested in reopening old wounds for someone who seemed primarily motivated by financial gain. All three of them expressed gratitude that I had been honest with them about their mother's call and had refused to arrange a reunion without their knowledge and consent. He said they felt confident in their decision to maintain the boundaries they had established years earlier, and they asked me to not feel guilty about my role in what Rebecca saw as their estrangement from her. They also told me that they planned to make their own statement about the situation, that they wanted people to understand their perspective and the choices they had made as adults. Emma, who had always been the most academic of the three, researched family law and alienation claims to make sure they were protected legally. Olivia, with her writing skills, helped draft a statement that was both factual and compassionate, acknowledging their mother's struggles while also making clear their own need for healthy relationships. Michael used his medical training to research the effects of childhood trauma and family dysfunction, adding credibility to their decision to maintain distance from toxic relationships. When Rebecca realized that her children were not going to welcome her back into their lives with open arms and checkbooks, she became increasingly desperate and angry. She began posting on social media about how I had stolen her children and corrupted them against her, how they owed her for the sacrifices she had made during their childhood, how ungrateful they were for everything she had done for them. Some extended family members and old friends who didn't know the full story initially sympathized with Rebecca's posts. A few people called me to ask about the situation, and I found myself in the difficult position of trying to defend my actions without sharing details about the children's experiences that weren't mine to share. I felt frustrated and hurt that people who had witnessed Rebecca's behavior over the years could so easily believe her version of events. But I also understood that she could be very persuasive when she wanted to be. The situation escalated when Rebecca decided to comment on the children's own social media posts, making accusations and demands in public forums where their friends and colleagues could see them. This forced Emma, Olivia, and Michael to respond publicly, to share their own perspective on their childhood and the choices they had made as adults. What followed was both heartbreaking and validating. The children's response was mature, factual, and compassionate, acknowledging their mother's struggles while also making clear that they had a right to protect themselves from relationships that were harmful to their well-being. They shared specific examples of their childhood experiences, not to hurt their mother, but to help people understand why they had made the choices they had made. The response from their friends, colleagues, and extended family was overwhelmingly supportive. People who had known them throughout their journey expressed pride in their strength and resilience, admiration for their success despite difficult circumstances, and understanding of their need to maintain healthy boundaries. Several people shared their own stories of family trauma and the difficult decisions they had had to make to protect their own mental health and well-being. Rebecca's attempts to portray herself as the victim quickly lost credibility as more people learned the full story. Her social media posts became increasingly erratic and desperate, and she eventually began deleting comments and blocking people who challenged her narrative. The children, meanwhile, received an outpouring of support from people who appreciated their honesty and courage in speaking their truth. Looking back on this entire experience, I'm struck by how much growth and healing happened even in the midst of the conflict. Emma, Olivia, and Michael had reached a point in their lives where they could calmly and confidently stand up for themselves, where they could acknowledge their mother's pain without taking responsibility for fixing her problems, where they could maintain their own emotional health while still expressing compassion for someone who had hurt them. As for me, I learnt that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good in the moment. That family relationships can be complicated and painful even when they're also filled with love. That sometimes protecting the people you care about means accepting that others will misunderstand or criticize your choices. I learned that the opinion that matters most is the one that comes from your own conscience, from your certainty that you acted with love and integrity even when the situation was difficult and complex. Today, several months after Rebecca's reappearance in our lives, things have settled into a new normal. The children continue to thrive in their careers and personal lives, using their experiences to help others and to build the kind of relationships they never had as children. They speak occasionally about their mother, usually with sadness for what could have been and gratitude for what they were able to overcome. Rebecca has stopped trying to contact us directly, though she occasionally makes vague posts on social media about family loyalty and ingratitude that we know are directed at us. Our parents have maintained a relationship with her, though they've also been clear that they support the choices their grandchildren have made, and they understand why those choices were necessary. As I finish writing this story, I want to say something to anyone who might be facing a similar situation. Anyone who finds themselves in the position of helping children who are being hurt by the adults who should be protecting them. It's not an easy position to be in, and there are no perfect solutions. You will second-guess yourself. You will wonder if you're doing more harm than good. You will lose sleep worrying about children who aren't officially yours to worry about. But I want you to know that it's possible for love to heal trauma, for stability to overcome chaos, for children to overcome difficult beginnings and build beautiful lives. I want you to know that the work you do to help a child feel safe and valued and loved will have ripple effects that extend far beyond what you can see in the moment. I want you to know that choosing to stay when staying is hard, choosing to love when love requires sacrifice, choosing to believe in someone's potential even when their present is difficult, these choices matter more than you know. Emma is now leading a team that designs solar energy systems for low-income communities, work that combines her engineering skills with her desire to help people who are struggling. Olivia just published her first novel, a coming-of-age story that helps other young people feel less alone in their struggles. Michael is completing his pediatric residency and plans to work in community health centres, where he can help children from difficult family situations. They call me their chosen family, their safe harbour, their proof that love doesn't have to be conditional or complicated or hurtful. They are my proof that when life gives you an opportunity to make a difference in someone else's world, when you're called to love beyond what's convenient or expected, when you have a chance to help someone heal and grow and thrive, that opportunity is a gift that will enrich your own life in ways you never imagined possible. Sometimes family is about the people who share your blood, and sometimes it's about the people who share your values and your commitment to treating each other with kindness and respect. Sometimes love is about grand gestures and dramatic moments, and sometimes it's about showing up consistently, creating stability, and believing in someone's worth even when they're struggling to believe in it themselves. This story began with abandonment, but it became a story about choosing love, about the healing power of consistency and care, about the beautiful things that can grow when someone decides that a child's well-being is more important than adult comfort or convenience. It's a story, and sometimes if you the child, you're the journey in those when these moments of ordinary life, these glimpses of their emerging personalities and passions, were what sustained me during the more challenging times. When these memories reminded me that love in action looks like showing up consistently, creating safe spaces for growth, celebrating small victories as well as large ones. The financial aspect of their gift, while generous beyond anything I had expected, was never really about the money itself. It was about these young adults recognizing that someone had invested in their futures when they had nothing tangible to offer in return, that someone had believed in their potential when they were struggling to believe in themselves, that someone had chosen to love them through their most difficult and vulnerable years. Their gift was a symbol of their success, yes, but it was also a symbol of their gratitude, their understanding of sacrifice, their commitment to ensuring that the person who had helped them was taken care of in return. I think about the nights I spent lying awake, worrying about whether I was doing enough, whether I was qualified to guide 3 teenagers through the complicated process of healing from family trauma while also preparing for college and careers. I remember the parent-teacher conferences where I had to explain that I was their aunt and guardian, not their mother, and the look of understanding that would cross teachers' faces when they realized these children had experienced significant disruption in their lives. I remember the financial stress of supporting 4 people on a teacher's salary, the creative budgeting and careful planning required to make sure everyone had what they needed. But I also remember the first time Emma brought home a report card with straight A's and wanted to celebrate with her favorite dinner, the pride in her voice as she talked about her college plans. I remember the evening Olivia read her first published poem aloud to us, her voice trembling with emotion as she shared words that had been born from pain but transformed into beauty. I remember Michael's excitement when he was accepted to his first choice university, his detailed explanations of the pre-med program, and his dreams of specializing in pediatrics so he could help children like he had once been. These memories are precious to me not because they represent my success as a guardian, but because they represent their triumph over circumstances that could have defined them in negative ways. They chose healing over bitterness, growth over stagnation, hope over despair. They chose to believe that their past did not determine their future, that they could break cycles of dysfunction and create something better for themselves and eventually for their own families. The response from our community when the conflict with Rebecca became public was both humbling and enlightening. I heard from former students and their parents, from colleagues and neighbours, from people I barely knew who had heard our story and wanted to offer support. Many shared their own experiences with family dysfunction, their own struggles with setting boundaries with toxic relatives, their own journeys toward healing and healthy relationships. One letter that particularly moved me came from a woman whose own aunt had played a similar role in her life when her parents were dealing with addiction and mental illness. She wrote about the ripple effects of that intervention, how it had not only saved her own life but had influenced her decision to become a social worker, which had led to her helping hundreds of other children over the course of her career. She reminded me that we never know the full impact of our choices to love and support someone in need, that the effects can extend far beyond what we can see in our own lifetimes. Another message came from a young man who had grown up in foster care and eventually found stability with a family that chose to love him. He talked about the importance of having adults who see potential in children who have experienced trauma, who refuse to give up on them even when progress is slow and difficult. He said that children who have been hurt by the adults who should have protected them need evidence that not all adults are unreliable, that some people can be trusted to keep their promises and show up consistently. These connections with others who had walked similar paths helped me understand that our story was not unique, that families are complicated everywhere, that children need advocates and champions in all kinds of circumstances. They helped me see that what I had done was not extraordinary in the sense of being superhuman, but extraordinary in the sense of being what love looks like when it requires sacrifice and commitment and faith in someone's potential. The legal research that Emma conducted when Rebecca threatened to challenge our family situation taught us all about the complexities of family law, the definitions of parental alienation, the rights of adult children to choose their own relationships. We learned that courts generally recognize that adult children have the right to set boundaries with family members who have been harmful. That financial success does not obligate someone to share that success with relatives who contributed nothing to their achievements. That choosing to protect one's mental health is not the same as being ungrateful or vindictive. This research also helped us understand Rebecca's position more clearly, helped us see that her pain and sense of loss were real even if her methods of expressing them were inappropriate. She had given birth to 3 children and had lost the opportunity to be part of their adult lives, had missed out on their graduations and achievements and milestones, had watched from a distance as someone else received the credit and gratitude for their success. From her perspective, she was the victim of circumstances beyond her control, the mother who had been unfairly separated from her children by interfering relatives and societal judgment. The difference, of course, was that Rebecca had created those circumstances through her own choices, her own failure to prioritize her children's emotional well-being, her own decision to see them as burdens rather than blessings. But understanding her perspective helped us respond to her pain with more compassion, even while maintaining our boundaries and protecting our own emotional health. The therapeutic work that all three children did during and after college was crucial to their healing process. They each found counselors who specialized in family trauma and childhood emotional neglect, who helped them process their experiences and develop healthy coping mechanisms and relationship skills. This work was not always easy or comfortable, but it was necessary for them to truly move forward and build the kinds of lives they wanted to have. Emma learned to manage her perfectionist tendencies and to accept that making mistakes was part of learning and growing, not evidence of personal failure. She developed close friendships with colleagues who appreciated her intelligence and work ethic, and she eventually began dating someone who understood her background and supported her continued growth. Her engineering work became a source of deep satisfaction as she realized she could use her skills to solve real problems and make a positive impact on environmental issues that mattered to her. Livia's writing became a powerful tool for processing her experiences and connecting with others who had faced similar challenges. Her first novel, while fiction, drew heavily on her understanding of family dysfunction and the journey toward healing. The response from readers was overwhelming, with many young people reaching out to thank her for helping them feel less alone in their struggles. She began speaking at schools and community centers about resilience and recovery, using her story to help others believe that healing was possible. Michael's medical training gave him a unique perspective on the connections between childhood trauma and physical health, between emotional well-being and overall development. He chose to specialize in pediatrics, not just because he loved working with children, but because he understood from personal experience how crucial it is for children to have adults who listen to them, who advocate for them, who recognize when they are struggling and need additional support. The ripple effects of their healing and success continue to expand in ways that amaze and humble me. Emma's environmental engineering work has led to solar energy projects in underserved communities, providing clean energy access to families who couldn't afford traditional power sources. Olivia's teaching and writing have inspired countless young people to find their voices and tell their stories, to believe that their experiences matter and their perspectives are valuable. Michael's medical work has helped children and families navigate complex healthcare systems, and his understanding of trauma has made him particularly effective at working with young patients who have experienced abuse or neglect. But perhaps most importantly, all three of them have learned to build healthy relationships, to communicate their needs and boundaries clearly, to choose partners and friends who treat them with respect and kindness. They have broken the cycles of dysfunction that characterized their early family experiences, and they are creating new patterns of love and support that will influence their own children and communities for generations to come. The relationship between the three siblings has also been beautiful to witness. They support each other through career challenges and personal milestones. They celebrate each other's successes genuinely and enthusiastically. They maintain close connections despite living in different cities and having demanding careers. They have created the kind of sibling bond that many people take for granted, but that they had to consciously build and nurture because their early experiences had taught them that family relationships could be sources of pain rather than comfort. Their relationship with our parents has evolved as well. Initially, our parents struggled with the conflict between supporting their daughter Rebecca and supporting their grandchildren's need for healthy boundaries. Over time, they came to understand that love sometimes requires tough choices, that enabling harmful behavior is not the same as showing compassion, that protecting children must take precedence over maintaining adult comfort. They have developed individual relationships with each of the children that are based on mutual respect and genuine interest, and they have been able to enjoy their grandchildren's successes without the drama and chaos that characterized earlier family gatherings. As I reflect on this entire experience now, several years after it began, I am struck by how much growth and healing has happened for all of us. The children have become confident, successful adults who use their experiences to help others and who have created lives filled with purpose and meaning. Our parents have learned to set boundaries with Rebecca while maintaining compassion for her struggles. I have learned that family can be chosen and created, that love in action looks like consistency and commitment, that helping someone heal and grow is one of the most rewarding experiences life can offer. The conflict with Rebecca eventually settled into a kind of distant détente. She stopped trying to contact us directly, stopped making public accusations on social media, stopped demanding money or access that none of us were willing to provide. We heard through other family members that she was attending therapy and working on her own healing, which we hoped would bring her peace, even if it didn't lead to reconciliation with her children. The children, now in their late 20s and early 30s, have each expressed that they remain open to the possibility of a relationship with their mother if she is ever able to approach them with genuine accountability for her past behavior and sincere interest in their current lives. But they are no longer waiting for that reconciliation, no longer hoping for it in ways that prevent them from moving forward with their own lives and relationships. This story has taught me that love is not always enough to heal family dysfunction, that good intentions cannot overcome patterns of harmful behavior, that children must sometimes protect themselves from parents who are unable or unwilling to prioritize their well-being. But it has also taught me that love, when combined with consistency and commitment and healthy boundaries, can create miraculous healing, can help people overcome terrible beginnings and build beautiful futures. Most importantly, this experience has shown me that family is ultimately about choice, about who we decide to invest in and support and celebrate. Biology creates certain connections and obligations, but true family bonds are built through shared values, mutual respect, consistent care, and unconditional love. Emma, Olivia, and Michael chose me as their family when they needed stability and support, and I chose them when they needed someone to believe in their potential and help them reach it. Thank you for staying with me through this long story, for caring about these three remarkable people who overcame so much to build such beautiful lives. Thank you for understanding that sometimes love requires difficult choices, that healing takes time and commitment, that families can be created through choice and intention, as well as through biology. And thank you for believing, as I do, that every child deserves to have at least one adult who sees their potential and refuses to give up on them, no matter how challenging the circumstances might be. If this story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you of someone in your own life who might need support or advocacy, if it has inspired you to consider how you might make a difference in a child's world, then sharing it has been worthwhile. Love has the power to heal, to transform, to create new possibilities where none existed before. But that power requires people willing to act on love, to choose love, to sacrifice for love when sacrifice is needed. These three children, now adults, are living proof that with the right support at the right time, anyone can overcome difficult beginnings and create lives that matter, lives that make the world a better place, lives that break cycles of pain and build new patterns of healing and hope. Their story continues to unfold in beautiful ways, and I feel honored to have played a small part in helping them write it. As I sit here today preparing to share this story with you, I think about all the moments that led us to where we are now. I think about the scared little children who used to hide behind my legs at family gatherings, seeking safety in my presence when their home life felt chaotic and unpredictable. I think about the teenagers who sat on my couch that spring evening, gathering the courage to ask for help in creating the stability they needed to build their futures. I think about the young adults who stood in my living room on my birthday, offering a gift that represented so much more than money, a gesture that symbolized their understanding of love, sacrifice, and gratitude. But mostly I think about the countless other children who are living in situations similar to what Emma, Olivia, and Michael experienced, children who are wondering if anyone sees their pain, if anyone believes in their potential, If anyone will choose to love them when love requires sacrifice and commitment. I think about the adults who might be in positions to help these children, who might be wondering if they have what it takes to make a difference, who might be hesitating because they're afraid of making mistakes, or overstepping boundaries, or taking on more than they can handle. To those adults, I want to say this: you don't have to be perfect to make a difference in a child's life. You don't have to have all the answers or unlimited resources or professional training in child development. What you need is a willingness to see a child's worth, to believe in their potential, to show up consistently even when showing up is inconvenient or difficult. What you need is the courage to choose love over comfort, to prioritize a child's well-being over adult convenience, to believe that your investment in their present will yield dividends in their future that extend far beyond what you can imagine. Children who have been hurt by the adults who should have protected them need evidence that not all adults are unreliable, that some people can be trusted to keep their promises, that love doesn't have to be conditional or painful or unpredictable. They need to experience what it feels like to have someone celebrate their successes genuinely, to have someone listen to their concerns without judgment, to have someone believe in their ability to overcome challenges and build meaningful lives. Sometimes that evidence comes from a parent who learns to prioritize their child's needs over their own immediate wants, who chooses healing and growth over familiar patterns of dysfunction. Sometimes it comes from a teacher who recognizes a student's potential and provides extra encouragement and support. Sometimes it comes from a neighbor who notices that something isn't right and finds appropriate ways to offer help. And sometimes, as in our case, it comes from an extended family member who decides that blood relationships create both opportunities and obligations, that loving a child means protecting them even when that protection requires difficult choices. The ripple effects of choosing to help a child in need extend far beyond the immediate impact on that child's life. Emma's work in renewable energy will help protect the environment for future generations, will provide clean power to families who couldn't otherwise afford it, will contribute to solutions for one of the most pressing challenges facing our planet. Olivia's writing and teaching will inspire other young people to find their voices, to tell their stories, to believe that their experiences matter and their perspectives are valuable. Michael's medical work will help children and families navigate healthcare systems, will provide healing and comfort to young patients who are facing their own challenges and traumas. But the impact goes even deeper than their professional contributions. Each of them has learned to build healthy relationships, to communicate clearly and honestly, to choose partners and friends who treat them with respect and kindness. They have learned to recognize red flags in relationships, to set appropriate boundaries, to ask for help when they need it. These skills will influence every relationship they have for the rest of their lives, will shape the way they parent their own children, will affect the communities they live in and the organizations they work for. Most importantly, they have learned that their past does not define their future, that healing is possible, that cycles of dysfunction can be broken. This knowledge gives them power to help others who are struggling with similar challenges, gives them credibility when they speak about resilience and recovery, gives them the emotional strength to support friends and colleagues who are dealing with family trauma or relationship difficulties. The financial gift they gave me has allowed me to reduce my work hours and spend more time volunteering with organizations that support children and families in crisis. I have been able to use my experience and Emma, Olivia, and Michael's story to help other adults understand the impact they can have when they choose to invest in a child's future. I have spoken at conferences for educators, social workers, and community organizations about the importance of recognizing and responding to childhood trauma, about the difference that one caring adult can make in a child's life. Through this volunteer work, I have met many other people who have played similar roles in children's lives, who have chosen to step in when children needed advocates and champions. I have heard stories of teachers who helped students navigate family dysfunction, of coaches who provided stability and mentorship to young people from chaotic homes, of neighbors and family friends who recognized that a child was struggling and found ways to offer support and encouragement. These stories remind me that what happened in our family is not unique in its basics, even if the specific details are different for everyone. Children need adults who believe in them, who see their potential, who are willing to invest time and energy and resources in helping them grow and heal and succeed. Adults who choose to fill that role don't just change individual lives, they change communities. They change the trajectory of families. They change the world in small but significant ways. If you are someone who has been thinking about how you might make a difference in a child's life, if you have been wondering whether you have what it takes to be a mentor or advocate or supportive presence for someone who needs help, I want to encourage you to take that step. You don't have to adopt children or become a guardian or make the kind of life-changing commitment that I made. There are many ways to support children who are struggling, many opportunities to be a positive influence in a young person's life. You might volunteer with organizations that provide tutoring or mentoring services, offering academic support and encouragement to students who are having difficulty in school. You might become involved with youth sports or arts programs, providing coaching and guidance that goes beyond just teaching skills to include building character and confidence. You might support families in crisis through religious organizations or community groups, offering practical help and emotional support during difficult times. Even small gestures can have significant impact. Being the adult who remembers a child's name and asks about their interests, who notices when they seem upset and takes time to listen, who celebrates their achievements and encourages them through setbacks, who treats them with respect and kindness consistently over time. These everyday interactions create the foundation of trust and connection that allows deeper healing and growth to happen. The key is consistency, reliability, and genuine care. Children who have been hurt by inconsistent or unreliable adults need to experience what it feels like to have someone follow through on their promises, someone they can count on to be there when they say they will be there, someone who shows interest in their well-being without expecting anything in return. Emma, Olivia, and Michael are now in their 30s, building families and careers and communities that reflect their values and their commitment to breaking cycles of dysfunction. They have chosen partners who respect and support them, who understand their backgrounds and appreciate their strength and resilience. They are raising their own children with the kind of consistency and unconditional love that they had to learn about later in life, ensuring that the next generation will have a different foundation to build from. Their success is not just personal triumph, it is evidence that healing is possible, that love can overcome trauma, that investing in a child's future can yield benefits that extend far beyond what anyone could have predicted. They are living proof that when someone chooses to love a child unconditionally, to believe in their potential even when that potential is not immediately apparent, to provide stability and support during the most vulnerable years, that choice can literally change the course of multiple lives and impact generations to come.